Okay, so good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank Lee Edelcourt and Philip Fimano for creating this really important platform. And Karen, Gretel, Noah, and Karen, thank you for inviting me to open the first World Hope Forum in Israel. My name is Oded, and I'm not a politician, thanks God, but I'm a brand designer, a strategist, a cultural researcher, and a journalist. And today I would like to show you a few projects that I did, a part of a long study in which I wanted to make any impact on my surrounding, but mostly to encourage you and your craziest idea to bring hope. We are born into a certain reality, a reality that shapes by geography, climate, culture, values, conventions, socioeconomical classes, history, and traditions that contain themes and principles. Our reality influences the way we live and behave. It determines our point of view, shapes our personality, identity, faith, and the way we create myth and thinking patterns. And this reality is subjective. No? I was born in the Middle East 43 years ago into a territory called Israel, a spot on the globe that doesn't know the meaning of certainty and stability. The Middle East life is saturated with tensions and stimulation that have influenced me and made me what I am. A pessimistic person, but a rebellious one. I cannot accept the Middle East obvious stagnant norms. I like to examine the possibility and changing the stigmas, the clichés, and the traditional ways of thinking. So I did try to change, not the Middle East, but those who live there. This is a glimpse into a long study and some surprising outcomes. My journey started at 2013 while moving to London to do my master's degree at the London College of Communication. That experience was an opportunity and gave me a perspective about the life in my home country. Now, every Israeli knows the phrase, the right to exist. Unfortunately, that fear always seems to be irrelevant. One of the things that fascinated me to explore it globally. Apparently, that fear wasn't the case among my Swedish friends from uni. So I decided to create a system that everyone could predict the chances of his country the chances to survive. I organized some surveys and formulated in the end 10 criteria from security to climate and even culture. The method examines the strengths of countries and their relevance to the world humanity. Then I thought again about the area that I arrived from, comparing to my friends from Sweden, realizing that it's so easy to know where is Scandinavia and how many countries belong to it. But what about the Middle East? So I decided to change and start a new research to explore the identity of the Middle East. What is going on in the Middle East? What is the Middle East? This is, by the way, the cover of the book that summarized my research, My Journey to the Middle East. I made a lot of association games with hundreds of international students. I wanted to know what is and how is the negative maybe image of the Middle East. Surprisingly, the negative and the positive associations were almost equal. And even more surprised to see the most common words: war, desert, sun, Iraq, Iran, hate oil, and somehow the USA. Now, how many names South America has, or Scandinavia? Believe it or not, along the history, the Middle East had 15 different names and terms. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Where is the Middle East? Now meet Alfred Tyerman. He was a US officer and historian, and he was the first person that tried to identify and to write down where is the Middle East. And he wrote at 1902, the area between Arabia and India. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tyerman, because it's somewhere between those areas, and it's still not a very clear answer. So I decided to make my own investigation with a lot of maps and old maps from back in the history, realizing in the end that the Middle East territory has changed along the history so many times. I was a bit desperate because I really wanted an answer. So I went to the authority, the United Nations. This is the official map from the United Nations about the Middle East. And as much as you see, who's in, who's out, still not very clear. I moved on. My next research was trying to explore the way the world saw us. What was our image? I investigated around 150 old airline posters of the Middle East that invited people to come to the Middle East, to Palestine or some other countries. I looked at the characters, the types, the colors, the textures, the colors, the symbols, and in the end, I created this color of code of the Middle East. Now imagine the one of Scandinavia, it would be completely different. This is in a way another definition of the Middle East. But it annoyed me because the Middle East is not just about sands, yellows, and camels. So I made this mosaic to show the variety of textures and colors just from landscape. You can see from the sea to mountains with snow and forests. Thinking about the image of the Middle East, I turned to the mass media. I decided to collect for 4 months any single item or article that will publish at the London Metro newspaper. Why the Metro? First, because it was free. Second, because thousands of people are reading it every single morning on the tube. Think about that powerful tool. After that step, I said, let's check the one from the Middle East. So I made another research. I was analyzing all the logos and the messages behind the names of the newspaper in the Middle East, trying to see what is the effect of those logos and those messages on the citizens in this area. Surprisingly, we are so similar. The country, our homeland, and so on. But we are more than just similar, we are identical. I made this book which called Who is Who? You can see it without the question mark. It's like a rhetoric question. I don't really want you to answer this question. And it was a book that you can open it from both sides. And it works like a guessing game. Each double spread shows people and situations from different countries in the Middle East, including Israel, of course. But the answer is not really important. I wanted to see how much we look alike, we eat the same, we even get angry the same, but we are not going to the same parties. These are some events and fairs and conventions in the Middle East, and me as a designer, I was so devastated by the fact that I'm not invited. We are not a part of those events around the Middle East. We are not even being covered by the local design magazines. It's like we are a part of this neighborhood, but we're not really existing. And why? Well, it's easy. Traditions, and politicians, and wars, and wars, and more politicians, and more. And I think that my enlightenment moment was that I write down all the axioms and the narrative that I'm living, and we are, the Israeli, are living day to day in Israel. And it was like from this is the promised land, and we don't have any other country, and it's belonged to us. We are all against odds. God gave us the land. They have 22 countries and so on. And I understood that this is actually the big paradox. And why paradox? Because as long as we, the Israel, we are holding those ideas and agendas, we will never be a part of this area. And it's not just about wars and everything. I believe that everything starts in education. These are children games from the early 50s in Israel. They are all about territory, identity, war, and existing. Now, this is how you build a narrative. So thinking about those children games and that powerful tool of education, I decided to create a fake kit by the Israeli government with plates like the one that children are coloring letters to learn the alphabet. But those narratives, instead of those letters, I put those narratives, those sentences that I translated into English and Arabic too. It was provocative, but it wasn't enough. So I needed to do something more stronger. I thought about two options: delete Israel, bye-bye, or merge it to the Middle East. Well, leaving sounds easy, but obviously it's not an option. Although I found out that along the history, many nations had flags, anthem, and unique culture disappeared over the years, over the history. So I had the other option. I decided to play like God. I'm a designer after all, so I can. I took Israel and its neighbors and took the borders out and merged them all together into one big territory and family. How simple is that? I call this new country the Middle East. Now we are not enemies anymore. We are citizens, neighbors, maybe friends with the same problems, dreams, and destiny. Sounds like a radical idea? Think again. As a designer, it was a big fun. Any country need a flag, so I played with the graphic elements of the 6 flags I destroyed. And it was a big fun. I've done a lot of options. By the way, my favorite one was the one that I just overlaid all the 3 flags on each other. Can you see the Star Boulevard in the middle? Few years later, the Design Week in Jerusalem happened with the topic of East. It felt like a glove to a hand. So I applied to show my research. And I was picked and being honored to present a solo exhibition from all the venues at the Museum of Islamic Art in Jerusalem. I think it was the most political exhibition they ever showed. The name of the exhibition was the Middle East, obvious. And I decided to divide it into 3 parts: past, present, and future. Now, the past, we'll talk about the Middle East evolution that you saw before, the present about those narratives, and the future, my solution. That was the first part of the exhibition. I called it 12 Middle Easts. And I presented an animation video you can see in front of in the beginning of, just before entering the gallery in the museum, because I really wanted to break down all the things that my viewer are knowing in a way and thinking. I wanted a tabula rasa before entering my exhibition. The second part was the paradox of the Middle East. So I wanted to reflect the noises, the saturation of messages that I'm living in Israel literally. So I took all those sentences and I covered the entire gallery with those sentences and narrative. And I don't know if you can see, but there's eyes in between those sentences. Those eyes are the eyes of the politicians. And I decided that none of the eyes will look at my viewers' eyes. It's like maybe being ashamed about their action that maybe brought us to this reality. Now, the last part of my exhibition was about the future, my solution, the new country named the Middle East. I really wanted to show, to present that territory that I structure. And I really wanted to use a ready-made to show it. So I found something quite interesting. I'm not sure we can call it a ready-made, but one of the things that I investigated, that it's a major part of both Arab and Israeli culture, which is the cacti. And this is the outcome. Look how they look like different types of characters. So my solo exhibition started at the Design Week, but eventually it was so popular with so many references and comments that the museum decided to keep it for another 3 months. In the end, I didn't change my reality or brought peace to the Middle East. But maybe I opened a crack to a different way of thinking, challenging a solution to this long-term conflict. I believe that we, the designers and creative community have a special power. I believe that doctors have their hands in hospital to save lives, lawyers their mouths in court to bring justice. We have words, shapes, colors, and our creativity. This lecture is about hope. We are born into a certain reality, an identity, a fate, a starting point that is not within our control. Is it true? Thank you very much.